Hey Ed, how are you?
Hello, Kevin. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you, man.
It's good to see you too.
Hey, today I want to talk to you about transistors and the role they play in fuzz pedals, specifically germanium versus silicon.
Okay.
So first, I wanted to ask you if you could talk a little bit about the history of the transistor and the role it's played in 20th century technology.
Yeah, the transistor replaced the tube probably around World War II. And we still use tubes today, but transistors are easier to make. And we see them in a lot of components we use today outside of guitars. They're everywhere.
Okay. And how do transistors work? What's the basic building blocks of or pieces of moving parts in a transistor?
Well, it's pretty simple. There's an input and an output, two legs, and then the third leg is voltage. And the higher the voltage, then it'll boost the input signal so it's louder on the output.
So let's talk about germanium. Is did that come before silicone? Or did silicone come first?
Yeah, germanium was first.
Okay, and tell me a little bit about why germanium came about.
Well, that's just what they found, and it works well. It sounds good in guitar electronics, and it works well outside of guitar too.
Okay,
But it's more expensive.
and what would be some examples of products that had germanium transistors in the early days?
Well, anything that would have used the silicon, well, the transistor chips would have, they would all been germanium at first.
Okay, and why is it that guitar players like germanium so much? Why is it so popular amongst guitar players?
Well, they were in the vintage equipment that a lot of people, grew to like. So, and they have maybe a little bit warmer sound than the silicon.
Okay. Okay. So just generally guitar players kind of find to be a little bit warmer than silicon.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit warmer,
Okay.
fuller sounding.
And what would you say are some of the problems that come along with using germanium transistors?
Well, it's more expensive and harder to work with. So,
Hmm.
most manufacturers are switching to the cheaper silicon.
Okay. And I think you mentioned in your article that it's actually not a very common element.
Yeah, yeah, it's harder to find, which is what leads to the higher price.
Okay. And also, is it true that germanium is temperature sensitive?
Oh yeah, yeah. If it gets hot, it'll break down.
Okay, so I is it an urban legend that some guitar players have stored their pedals in the freezer? Is that actually true?
I don't know. I've never met anyone who stored a pedal in the fridge, but I'm sure there are some people who do it.
Okay, okay. So let's talk about silicone. Why did silicone come about?
Well, it works almost as good, and it's everywhere, so it's cheap,
Hmm.
and we use it everywhere now.
Okay, and in when we had mentioned earlier about germanium being an element that's not very common, is that not so
Yeah.
the case with silicone?
No, we could find silicon anywhere. It's pretty plentiful.
Okay. And I think you also mentioned in your article that silicone has a higher voltage threshold.
Yeah, it's a lot more stable than germanium. So
Okay. Okay. And this is a pretty hotly debated topic between guitar players. It seems like
yeah,
they argue a lot of which is better, silicone or
yeah.
germanium.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, germanium might sound better if you have really good ears. Well, a lot of people will do fine with the silicon. It's
Hmm.
just something to argue over.
Do you think that most people can really tell a difference?
I don't know. I never was able to meet anyone who could, but
Mm,
I would like to see someone actually tell the difference. There's a
yeah.
you know
Both are available now, right?
yeah, you could still find pedals with germanium, but you have to wonder how much of the rest of the circuit plays a part in the overall sound too. So
Okay.
I don't know how much. Yeah,
So I guess the main thing, so generally the main thing to take away from this conversation is that germanium, a lot of people consider germanium to be warmer than silicone, but
Yeah.
that germanium can be problematic in terms of that it can be affected by temperature and possibly
Yeah.
not really consistent from pedal to pedal, each germanium
Right.
transistor. And
Right. And your pedal might change sound as the temperature changes in your home. So
okay,
it sounds good at 11 in the morning, but maybe not so much at 3 in the afternoon.
okay,
So, unless you put it in the freezer, right?
right. And that with silicon,
Yeah.
that some consider silicon to be not quite as warm, but it's
Yeah.
much more consistent and more reliable.
Yeah. Yeah. It always sounds the same. It's consistent. It's inexpensive. So,
Okay, great. I think I've got it.
okay.
Thanks a lot, Ed. I'll see you
You're
next time.
welcome. Yep. No problem. Thanks.
Take it easy.